Evening all, Stephen here, coming to you once again from my fireside here in London in the UK. Excuse me a second. Probably won't be that many more evenings left where I need to have a fire, so I've come up with a new location. Smoking my trusty Bayard estate once again, with some salami, Virginia and Perique flake. Drinking some beer, of course. And tonight I'm drinking Bishop's Finger from the Shepherd Neame Brewery. It's the oldest brewery in the UK. They've been around since the 17th century. And the odd name, Bishop's Finger, it's not rude. It actually comes from the local nickname for a signpost in Kent on the Pilgrim's Way, pointing the way to Canterbury Cathedral and the tomb of Thomas Becket. And what I'm doing in this video is kind of a VR to Matches, and to the video that he put up on Friday. Excellent video he put up on Friday. If you haven't seen it, you've got to watch it. It's called Dizzy Days, in which he recounted a drug-fueled experience from the summer of '72 when he was a young man. And it set me thinking about an experience of my own, a similarly enhanced experience of my own, also in the summer of '72 at the same time. Matches, John and I, we're the same age, and like John, I was also at that age in with a bunch of friends who liked to indulge in illegal substances, as many young people did at that time, and maybe still do, I wouldn't know. My particular story comes from the tail end of the school summer holiday in '72, and I can actually be specific about the date that this happened. It was Saturday the 9th of September 1972, and I'll explain later how I'm able to recall with absolute clarity what the date was. But as I say, it was the tail end of the holiday, and me and my friends, we'd been working during the summer holiday and we'd got some money in our pocket, and it being near the end, we thought we'd go and treat ourselves. And I was living in Bedfordshire at the time, in a small village. And we made our way, me and two of my friends, Pat and Mick, neither of whom were Irish by the way, but that's another story. My two friends, Pat and Mick, we made our way down to a town in North Hertfordshire called Hitchin, a market town, which was kind of the centre for the counterculture in the area at that time, and was also a distribution point for drugs. And we went down there with money in our pocket on this Saturday, and we hooked up with someone, and we scored, me and Mick anyway, scored ourselves some grass, as we called it then. I mean, weed, pot, green leaf, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, we called it grass. So me and Mick scored ourselves some. Excuse me a sec. Cheers, by the way. And we spent the next couple of hours hanging around Hitchin, chilling out and smoking a few joints and getting ourselves nicely toasted. Excuse me a second. And as the evening wore on, we reached a point where we all needed to answer a call of nature. And so we went into a public toilet on the market square in Hitchin. I can still see it in my mind's eye, even though it's so long ago. And Pat and I went to the urinal, sorry to raise indelicate matters, and Mick went into one of the cubicles and closed the door. And there was no one else in the toilet. And of course we were pretty nicely stoned at this point. And so we were talking far too loud and talking very indiscreetly as well. And we hadn't been in there long when someone walked in. And that someone happened to be a police officer. Well, the moment Pat and I saw him, of course we clammed up. But Mick, who was in the cubicle with the door shut, didn't know anyone had come in, and so he carried on yakking. And the copper gave us a hard look and looked around and then walked out. And me and Pat got Mick out of the cubicle and we told him what had happened and we talked about what we were going to do. I mean, at that point in time, you could say there were two courses of action open to us. There was the smart move, which was to take what weed we had left and flush it down the toilet before exiting. Or there was the dumb move, which would be to assume that the copper wasn't interested in us and had gone about his business. And being teenage boys, who, as we all know, aren't the sharpest tools in the box, we decided on the dumb course of action. And so we thought, he's gone, we'll walk out. And of course, when we walked outside, there was not one but two policemen standing out there leaning on their car. And they had us straight up against the wall and said, empty your pockets. Now, I didn't actually have much weed left by that point, and I got the baggie and I'd folded it up tight and I tucked it down in my cigarette packet between the foil and the carton. Yeah, that's really going to confuse any policeman, isn't it? But, you know, as I say, teenage boys. And these coppers must have frisked and searched so many young hippies in their time. As soon as I got the cigarettes out, he took them off me, he pulled them out, the weed dropped down in the bottom of the box, and he said to his mate, we've got one. And I had to put my hands on my head and get in the back of the car. They didn't find anything on Pat because he hadn't bought anything, but they found Mick's as well, and so all three of us were then sitting in the back of the car with our hands on our heads and were driven down to the local station. Where we were split up and stuck in rooms on our own. Well, me and Mick were stuck in individual rooms on our own. Poor old Pat, who hadn't actually bought anything and didn't have anything on him, was taken downstairs and strip searched. Apparently they shone a torch up his backside, which I can't think was pleasant for anyone involved. But there you go. At least he wasn't caught in possession of anything. But I was locked in this room to wait for a drug squad detective to become available. And then I was interviewed under caution, and then I was charged. And then I was taken downstairs and they took my fingerprints, and then I had to go to the other room and they took my mug shots, and then I was locked in a cell. And they then tried to get hold of someone at home to come and pick me up. But my mum had walked out on us about 2 years before, and my dad was down in London with his girlfriend. So the only person they could get was my sister, who was 18 at the time, and I think on holiday back from college. She came and picked me up. And then it was just a matter of waiting for the trial. And the reason why I can remember the date so clearly is that that particular day was 2 days after my 17th birthday. And both my friends, including Mick, the other guy that was caught in possession, were still 16, but I was 17 and had been for 2 days. So Mick went to juvenile court, but because I was 17, I had to go to the big boys court and get the big boys punishment. And when it eventually rolled around, I was up before the beak, as they say. Fortunately, I didn't get a custodial sentence, I just got a hefty fine and a criminal record. Well, it's not quite the end of the story, because I left school shortly after that with hardly any qualifications. Cheers. And I spent the next few years, because I had virtually no qualifications, working in unskilled labouring jobs. The kind of thing where you turn up, you have a word with the gaffer, if he likes the look of you, you get the job. There was nothing sort of official about it. And then we hit 1976 and unemployment in this country reached a record high. And I was out of work, lost my job, and I was unemployed and living in Bedfordshire. And I've been unemployed a few months, and I decided to move down to London and take my chances here. And so that's what I did. And I was unemployed for a few months more, and then in the local paper I saw that the civil service were recruiting low-grade clerical workers. I didn't particularly fancy it, but I needed to get work. And so I applied, and they sent me an application form, and it was the first time I'd ever completed a job application form. And of course, being the civil service, one of the questions on it was, do you have a criminal record? Now I thought, this is over 4 years ago, no one's going to find out. I answered no. And I sent the form off, and I got called in for an interview, and I got the job. And I was posted to an office in Soho in the West End. And I'd been working there a couple of months, got my feet under the table, everything was going smoothly, and then I got summoned up to the personnel manager's office, only to be told that headquarters had finally got round to running their background checks on me, and they'd found out I got a criminal record. So you could say at that point my future hung in the balance, because they could have dismissed me straight away. Get your coat and walk out now. I'd lied on the application form. There was nothing to stop them just giving me the sack. But I was fortunate in that the personnel manager was a lady by the name of Yvonne Bascom. I only saw her for a short time after that, so it's been like 40 odd years, but I always remember her. Now, the fact that she was a woman, and in those days, back in the 70s, it was still difficult for women to climb the management ladder in jobs in this country. And so, you know, she'd been pretty successful in making it as far as she had. There was also the fact that she was black. She was a West Indian lady. So she had faced a fair amount of challenges to get to the senior position that she was holding. And she knew the way of the world, and she was a common sense and very nice person. And so she took a look at me and decided, you know, let's give this kid a chance. And so she sat down with me, and we worked up this statement in which I humbled myself. Youthful indiscretion, never touched the stuff since, promised to be good, all that kind of stuff. And then she took that and she sent it back to headquarters and said, we don't need to take any further action in this case. And I ended up working for the civil service for 34 years and making a career out of it. And if it had been someone else, some officious pen pusher, they could have just told me to get my cards and get out on that day. So she made a huge difference to my life, because if I had been sacked from that job, I'd have been an unemployed young person with no qualifications, a criminal record, and the fact that I'd been sacked from the civil service for lying on my application form. I don't know what would have happened, what would have become of me. So she made a huge difference in my life. So I'd like to drink to Yvonne Bascom, wherever she is now. Thank you very much. You're a very decent lady. Cheers. And that's really my story. Of course, the statute of limitations has run out on my conviction now, but I dare say, knowing the way bureaucracy works in this country, my mugshots and fingerprints and all my details are still locked away in some archive somewhere, waiting for the day. And the funny thing is, in a strange twist of coincidence, my youngest daughter is 17, and she actually shares the same birthday as Matches in February. And I have to say, if I thought that she was doing drugs, especially if she was doing drugs at school, I'd be apoplectic. Which just goes to show you the double standards we all operate as parents, I think. Don't do as I do, do as I say. It's all part of life's experience, but you know, as I say, we don't want our kids to make the same mistakes that we made. Anyway, just on one final note, I had, because Matches was talking about popping his pills at school, I had one pill popping experience as well. Only I took some speed, Dexedrine, or Dexies as we used to call them. And I was never a model student. I used to be the kid that was at the back of the class, slumped over his desk, not paying any attention and daydreaming. But I tell you, the day that I took those Dexies at school, every time the teacher asked a question, I was sticking my hand up. And all the other kids were turning around and looking at me in amazement. I don't suppose I got any of the answers right, but you couldn't fault my drug-fueled enthusiasm. But I wouldn't recommend it. Any youths watching, just say no. Anyway, I've probably rambled on far too long, but cheers, John, for prompting that memory. It'd be interesting to hear from other people about their youthful indiscretions, because we've all got a few somewhere or other. But I certainly enjoyed watching John's, and I've enjoyed sort of recounting mine as well. So here you are, a felon. I'd like to wish you all a good evening, whatever you are, whatever you're doing, and hopefully I'll speak to you again soon. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.